This is a quote from the book Everything Moves: How Biotensegrity Informs Human Movement. And I don't imagine many people are very familiar with biotensegrity, and that's okay. This is all going to unfold in our time together. So I'm introducing a lot of things today. Hopefully, it's not too much, but nothing is going to be only here once. I promise you that. So, Susan, who's a friend in this community, says there are no unrelated parts. If a plant has discolored leaves, we do not expect the cause nor the remedy to be local to the leaf. And this is the kind of expansive thinking that we encourage in this community because somehow we've created a divide between ourselves, the human race, and other living things. It's no surprise to me that when I see a plant in my house wilting, that it has nothing to do where I see the wilting. But when it comes to my body, if I feel a pain in my hip, I go to my hip, right? I go to the symptom instead of looking for a deeper cause. Now, the cause of our issues, whether they're truly issues or just disorganization or just a lack of refinement, whatever our isms are, our concerns with our body and its outcomes, um, the causes could be hidden away. We don't know where they are, which is why we can work with the big body and maybe start to shed a little light on how we can let the isms dissipate. Nothing that we did with the arms or the leg really was about solving a problem, but maybe in the process, you found a way of solving a problem. I know somebody in the chat, I think Emily said that, like has something to do with their jaw. Now we have more specificity in the room by doing something that wasn't actually badgering a problem. This brings us to an updated idea about the body where we inherited notions that muscles go from bone to bone and create a system of leverage through pulleys. The work of Tom Myers and others in anatomy trains shows us that our muscles connect to each other through the fascial system, which is the connective tissue. And this is going to be a very shallow dive into a little bit about fascia because more and more will come out. So this is one aspect of fascia, how at a deep level in our body, a density closer to the bones than to the skin, do we have this fascia that is the environment for our muscles, and our muscles grow within it, and it's fully connected, so they work together. And so you can see here in this image made by an artist of these muscles of the hand and the upper arm that connect to the pectoralis. This is a more superficial line of musculature, connectivity of musculature, compared to this other line that goes to pec minor and the biceps. This is more deep to the body. And if we look at it from the back, we can see how one of these lines connects into towards our spine and also connects up towards our head. And this other line that's more superficial connects through our shoulder, through our latissimus dorsi, up to our head, right? That the hands through the lower arms, through the upper arms, through the shoulder girdle, to the spine, connect to the neck. And so it's no wonder that if you put your mind's eye into your throat and reach your arms out, that you might feel the fabric of your throat widening. That might be something you noticed already. It might be something you didn't notice because we aren't necessarily taught to move something but look somewhere else. And that is a simple thing that you can do a lot, right? Stand on one foot, but notice how that changes the feelings inside your vocal tract, the shape inside your vocal tract. Stand on one foot and notice, does that free your jaw, make it feel lighter as it's held up to the skull, or does it make it feel heavier? The art of pointing the attention is so simple and so useful to shine light into areas that are harder for us to map because they're buried within us, even our throat, kind of a murky area to map out. And so the anatomy trains show that on different densities of the body, like from superficial to more internal to more external, essentially, that muscles are continuous with the fibers of the fascia, and the flow is visible. the visible flow of the fibers, that they have a direction, and which is one of the ways that Tom Myers decided what these anatomy trains are. They're all on the same level of the body, closer to the skin, closer to the bone, and that all the fibers are flowing continuously in one direction. So they're kind of like train tracks. That's how he came up with anatomy trains. And it's good to mention that anatomy trains is a model. It's not true. This is not the only way that muscles connect to the throat. This is just Tom Myers' idea of how the body is organized, but it's just an idea, a helpful one. And it brings us to considering fascia, which is what the anatomy models left out. There is no fascia in classical anatomy, which is why we don't know a lot about it. We thought it was the useless stuff, the packing peanuts in your Amazon box. But we now know, as in the last few decades, that it's really our richest sensory organ, and folks are even suggesting it as more than an organ, as a system of energy flow and force transmission, and a few other things that some of which we'll get into today. But this quote by Leonid Bloom, who is a brilliant body worker in Ukraine, he says, fascia has behavior and dynamic responses. It requires a different perspective. That's why we want to forget anatomy first and then rediscover it out of the dynamic processes. This is big. This is big because we're all intelligent. We've all learned a lot about the body. We know things about muscle. We know things about vocal function and what muscles do what. Let's try to forget it temporarily. It's useful. I'm not saying forget it because it's valueless. But in this space, let's try to like put it on the side burner and have our beginner's minds on so that we can be as fresh a blank slate as possible so that we can learn as much as possible and then reconcile it with what we know. Have our senses wide open and then ask ourselves, how does that connect to what I know and believe about the body already? Does it poke holes in some things? Does it support some things? And it's never about coming to the conclusions. It's just the questions that lead to more questions. And so this is one of the images I was referring to. I don't exactly remember the context now, but you can always remind me in the chat if I miss something or leave something out. But when we think about the body as an interconnected functional unity as opposed to the muscles and bones paradigm, we might get more information about what we see in the real world. How we see singers using their bodies, using the shapes in their bodies, not just the shapes in their mouths. And these are all opera singers here, and there are patterns. And the patterns might make you curious. They might give you something to explore. Is this connecting the arm train? It is connected to the arm train and everything else as well. But what we do see here is a lot of activity in the arms and the hands. And this is a very different thing than how most people would go into a voice lesson and be told, relax, relax and sing, just relax, right? But it doesn't look relaxed. Not that relax and sing isn't useful and can't be tremendously educational, but there's something about networking in how the full body activates itself for performance. And you see so much going on here, so much in the hands, not just the mouths. There's a lot to see in the mouths too. Yeah, you're always told no movement in classical training, and yet, look at it. Look at it. It does not look like no movement. And yeah, of course it didn't work. Because the body is going to recruit all sorts of energy, especially in a high intensity moment. And all of these look like high intensity moments, right? So why leave it to just waist up or alignment and everything internal? But maybe there's something to what we see. And these are a bunch of Broadway singers. Similar and different. A lot of energy in the hands, a lot of energy in the arms. Not just reaching out, but Ethel here is pulling in. We didn't explore that. That's a whole other world that might show you some different nuances, some different vocal possibilities, moving towards greater ease, more resonance, more freedom. something more to explore. And here we see a little bend back, a little bend back. But heart lift here, heart sinking here. Options. Get curious about this stuff. And if you've got a song or your client has a song that where there's a really challenging moment, go watch the artist. Go see how the original artist or a bunch of different artists strategize that moment because there's some clues there, right? Maybe there's something about this shape that Lindsay Mendez is in here where she's hinging back but also a little hollow through the heart. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe it's worth exploring. Maybe it'll lead nowhere and it was just an interesting thing to try on for size. I feel like I'm rediscovering my hips as we stand here. Love the beginner's mind sentiment. So true. You take the limitations off of what's possible to learn when you let all your beliefs start with a lowercase b instead of an uppercase B. So what is fascia? This is not what are all its functions. This is really about one function, one way we can think about fascia as our form, our architecture, or our soft skeleton, as David Lasondak puts it in his book Fascia: What It Is and Why It Matters. That we can think of fascia as being the scaffolding for the rest of our body. It scaffolds our bones with the periosteum that wraps around our bones that is fascial. That's a good question, Dimitri. What is here on the left? Oh my God, what is here on the left? How did I not even explain that? What is there on the left is a human heart. And, or maybe it's not human, but it is a heart. And they've decellularized it. So there's no heart cells in it. And so what we're looking at is the scaffolding for the heart, just the connective tissue of the heart, the shape of the heart with no heart cells in it. It's called a ghost heart, if you want to look it up. And they've made other ghost organs. I thought it was a tooth. Not a tooth. It is not a tooth. It is a heart. And what is fascinating is they've taken undifferentiated cells like stem cells and Schwann cells and put them into these ghost organs. And somehow the organ, the shape of the organ that has none of the cells that make it into the organ that it is, somehow has the information and the undifferentiated cells become heart cells or whatever organ they were inserted into. So there's mysteries of the body that we don't understand. How could undifferentiated cells be taught to become heart cells by being put into the structure of a heart? Somehow that heart knows it's a heart. Schwann cells, seeing the chat. Schwann cells is another way that they talk about undifferentiated cells, cells that are neutral and then change shape to become specialized. Cells start as sort of blank slates and then change. It's actually a shape change that helps differentiate them into their specific functioning. So there's neutral cells that they use to create more specified cells for transplants and whatnot. So yes, what we're seeing here is fascia. That is a certain presentation of fascia. It is not your deep fascia. It is a different kind of fascia, and there are many different presentations of fascia through the whole body. But what's important to understand is that it's the structure for everything. It's the scaffolding for everything. It's not just around muscles, it's through muscles. It's not just around organs, it creates the shape of the organ. It holds your skeleton into its spatial organization without your bones actually touching. So yeah, big deep dive into fascia. And I've got a lot of resources for you on all this stuff too. I'll tell you all about all on my website. So you can take yourself on a deeper dive at 2 p.m. today. Um, if you're in Eastern Standard Time. So fascia is our organ of form. It is not only shaping the body, but it supports what you do with the body. This is a picture of Amar Bharati, who for over 50 years has held his arm up in the air as a sign of devotion. And I remember showing this image a couple years ago and somebody asked me, wouldn't it be painful? And my answer was, it's probably more painful for them to try to lower their arm at this point because when you don't move areas of your body, the fascia that's essentially like a fluid, a thick fluid like warm honey or partially set jello, it stiffens. It loses its hydration. And when it stiffens, it becomes more dense, like bone. And so Amar Barati's body has supported his choice to leave his arm up and not move it there. And so instead of staying fluidic, where he'd have to continually use more muscular energy to leave his arm up in the air, his connective tissue has densified and become like bone. So it's actually quite an energy efficient thing that he's doing. Even though it's not an efficient thing, probably has ramifications through his whole body. But for him to make this choice over and over again for a continued long amount of time, his system has said, well, let's make this as efficient as it can be. And that's what your nervous system does. Helps you stay easy in what you're doing. Easier is just around the corner, though. Our deep fascia shapes our body in one way, and closer to the skin, in fact, right underneath the skin, is our superficial fascia, which on the right, you see a cadaver with the superficial fascia intact, and then on the left, you see only the superficial fascia, like a suit of that person, like a suit of their shape. The superficial fascia is the fascia that snugs your fat into place. So if you feel around your arm, you'll feel how it's squishy, sort of spongy. You're feeling your superficial fascia. And if you press in a little bit and try to get through the fat, you might feel it more strappy and you'll be feeling your deep fascia. And the superficial fascia is directly connected to your deep fascia. So you can do soft work on the skin, which is connected to your superficial fascia and connected down to your deep fascia, which connects to the bone. And you can actually do a lot of good work just by working with the skin. And we will. And if you've worked with me in the past, in some of the workshops recently, you've done some very soft touch work that's been very effective to free some bones. And so this is a different way of looking at the body, not in parts and pieces, but in densities, from out to in or from in to out. And this is a simplification, but we could look at the skin level. And underneath the skin level is our superficial fascia and fat. Underneath that is fascia, which is muscle and fascia, which is that deep fascia density, which connects to the covering of the bone, the periosteum, which connects to the bone. And it's all interconnected and intra-connected. So, like I was just saying, you can work with the skin and get to the bone. You can kind of choose your own adventure with how deep in you are sensing. But this is a different kind of way of understanding the body without chopping it up into metaphorical parts. Because our vocal folds are never apart from our vocal tract, which is never apart from our soft palate, which is never apart from our head, which is never apart from our jaw, which is never apart from our etc., etc. So working with the whole body as it is a way in. Not the only way in, and certainly we will talk about parts and talk in parts sometimes, but in order to zoom out and talk to the whole again. So this is where two different perspectives can be true. The body has parts, the body is whole. Both are true. Both are useful. And because we're holding two conflicting truths at the same time, we allow more possibilities to enter. So I don't want to throw the baby with the bathwater. If you're someone who thinks in anatomical language, that's totally fine. You're going to gain another way of thinking about the body. And if you're somebody who thinks about the body in its whole holistic sort of full form, we're going to immerse ourselves there, but also talk about parts in conjunction to the wholeness of the body that is. Both can be true. It's like the image of the two faces that are made by one vase, a negative space around one vase, right? Both are true. There are two faces, and there is a vase. Now, with that image, you can't see both at the same time, which is interesting. You can go back and forth really quickly, but you can only see one at a time. Sort of an interesting angle. So, let's do a little something here based on the deep front line in anatomy trains. Deep front line, we could think of as your core, like a core to the apple, the inner density. And you see on the right here, there's an image of one piece of body fabric from tongue to toes. That is one iteration of the deep front line, and their anatomy trains keeps changing, so there are other iterations as well. Um, but just notice, there are no staples, there's no sutures, there's no pins, there's nothing holding all of these anatomical parts together other than they aren't parts. They're distinctions, as author and thought leader Joanne Avison says. So take a moment in your chair. We're talking about support. Let's bring breath into the picture a little bit. And start to breathe with your eyes closed. And notice your abdomen. And notice how your abdomen is moving. And just a little above your abdomen is your rib basket. Since your abdomen is moving, it's likely that your ribs are moving as well. And just follow how around from the front of your abdomen towards the sides of your abdomen, there might be movement, and that could encourage the perimeter of the rib basket to move a little bit more, and a little bit more symmetrically, maybe. And the rib basket is kind of like a diagonal ring, higher up in the front, lower down in the back. Connects all the way down to the middle of the lumbar vertebrae. And keep letting your mind's eye move around your body, around your torso, seeing how the whole rib basket can move. And if you look to the top of your rib basket and you see that there's no movement, scan downwards and find where there is movement. And just keep building on, building out from where you feel there is movement to where it tapers. And simply pointing your mind's eye towards where it tapers might become an invitation for more participation. And just gently invite more of your upper torso into this breath, noticing how if the top ribs are expanding and contracting as you inhale and exhale, how that might lead up your neck. And you might feel inside your throat. And like a ripple on a pond, you might feel the most at the center of your body, but sense an echo of the ripple at the distant ends. And don't work too hard. Stay comfortable. Always, always. You can come back to this. You'll see more next time you look. But scan back down towards the center of your torso, just taking inventory along the way, that everywhere you pass, from the front of the body to the back to the sides, all the way around, there is movement, even just a little. And then follow the feelings of expansion and contraction further downwards, noticing how the expanding abdomen invites in a little bit more expansion towards the pelvis, towards the low back. And you might even feel underneath the pelvis, there's some engagement into the inner thigh, just like a little energy being pushed out away from your center as you inhale. And like an ocean wave, as you exhale, it just gets drawn back in. And maybe you can continue to follow the feelings of movement conjoined with the breath down the legs. Maybe you can feel a subtle echo all the way down to the feet. and see what you have to do to distance your mind's eye to start to bring in the whole body into this movement, adjoining the upper body to where your gaze was on the lower body. The image that comes to my mind, which might be different than an image that you develop, is that like a radio signal, just transmitting outwards in every direction. And it doesn't matter how well you did feeling this breath through your whole body. Maybe there was something that captured your attention, something interesting, something new in your senses. But let it fade away. Let it fade away. Could be just a seed that you're planting today. Check in on that seed later on.